Okay, first thing I want to know is like, are you tired? You have been doing so
Are you
much.
tired?
Are you exhausted?
Girl, I don't know what happened to me when my parents conceived me, but I very rarely get tired. And this is why I feel like I'm in the wrong business. Like I should have been like a Taylor Swift or a Beyonce because I could tour, I could go like ham every day, all night. As long as I get like 7, 8 hours of sleep, I'm
Incredible.
good. Like I'm good.
Incredible.
And I don't drink coffee. That's a no coffee me.
That's
Like I
like you
don't.
were literally made to be doing what you're doing. Because here's the thing, even though you're like, I should have been a Taylor Swift or Beyonce, you're doing that. You're just doing it for finance.
That's right. Yes. I
I'll
love
never
it.
forget when you came on stage in FinCon, I think it was last year, and it was just like,
Yeah.
whoa, she is awake.
I honestly broke everybody's eardrums. I was like,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
so loud in the mic.
I love it, but that's what we need. We need like different representation in the space where people are not going to put you to sleep for talking
Yes.
about how to manage a budget, how to pay off your debt. Like that stuff
Yes,
is the
girl.
stuff that puts
No, it's
people to
true.
sleep.
I feel like because the topic is seen as so boring and so dry and stuff, like
Hmm.
you kind of have to do what you and I do, which is like you just
Hmm.
put your personality in the forefront of it all, and that captures people's attention. And then they stay for the financial stuff because it's helpful, but that's not really where you hook them. And that
Exactly.
kind of works,
Exactly. Watch these bad dance moves of mine, and then eventually I'm slowly going to make you learn what a Roth IRA is.
I am like silent chuckle every time. Sometimes I'll be literally in my apartment, just like chilling. My boyfriend's watching some random YouTube videos, and I'll start scrolling, and I'll come across your content, and I'll just be like,
Yeah, that makes me happy.
I love it.
That is what I'm there for. That's what I'm here for. So, congratulations on putting your book out. How has that whole
Thank
process been for
you.
you?
Ooh, it's fun. It's learning a whole new skill that like I didn't have before. One of the things about like my content, I got lucky. Like in 2015, I put out some videos on YouTube. I didn't know a damn thing about the freaking algorithms, about ads, about SEO. I didn't know shit about shit. Like I was just trying to help people and just doing something that I was passionate about, telling stories and talking and making videos, etc., teaching. And, lots of people have seen those videos. The channel did really well. It later led to me doing Instagram too. And it's all done really well, very organically, I gotta say. And I just kind of assumed like the book would be the same way.
Right?
That's not how
Right?
that
It's
shit works.
not.
No, the book is a whole different beast. Like,
It's like a full-time job. I've seen Berna talk about it as well, where it's just like, this is a grind.
it is. And so the first part of the grind is writing the book and
Hmm.
just getting the book done, right? Once that's done, you think, oh, finally I can take a vacation. No, now marketing the book is a whole separate grind, a whole separate beast. That's kind of been my mode for like the past couple of months. So the book's been out for 2 months and 2 weeks. And
Hmm.
so 2.5 months. And it's been doing very well. We've sold over 4,000 copies and, very
Holy
minimal.
shit. Congrats.
I know, which is it's so amazing. Like it's really hard for just average books to sell more than 1,000 copies.
I know. And
So
it's like most
4,000.
books never even sell like 3,000
Yeah.
copies.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of those stats and I was like, this is freaking amazing. Now, granted, a lot of that is like, I have an audience and there's a lot of people who
Sure.
were like waiting for me to like finally get the book out and stuff. And also a lot of schools have been buying the book in bulk to buy
Hell
class
yeah.
sets and stuff, which is freaking amazing. But the marketing efforts is something where I feel like I'm starting to now dig into that world and learn really what it takes to market a book because people like to shop for stuff like clothes and
Right.
shoes and gadgets and all the kind of stuff. That many people don't really like to shop for books.
Mm.
So you kind of have to get creative with how you market it. But I've been having fun with it.
I mean, what a new like skill set to learn as well, because it's so different than like just like you said, putting out content where
Right.
that's free and like we know how the algorithm works. We've learned how the algorithm works. Well, congratulations. And for those of you who are listening, you may recognize her voice, you may not. We've got Yanely Espinal on, better known as MissBeHelpful on the internet. And actually, I don't know if I've told you this, you were one of the first female YouTubers who I ever came across when before I was Clo Bare Money Coach and I was out there learning, you were one of the first. So it's so wild for me to have a moment of like, oh my gosh, she's on the podcast now. This is so cool.
Tell me that. You never told me that. I love that so much. It's funny. I get that from a lot of like, even now, some people that I consider to be OGs that have just been in the space for a long time. And they'll be like, no, girl, like I remember I looked online. I didn't find anybody. It was like 2016 and yours was the first stuff that I really came across. And it just makes me, first of all, feel old. And second of all, feel like, isn't that amazing that you just did some projects that you thought were cool and that would help somebody out there and end up like inspiring and creating this like spiral of more and more women who like decide, you know what, she did it, I can do it, I can do that. And
Yeah.
Now, just behind me, those of you who are watching, like I have so many books written by women of color here and women in general, all over my bookshelf. And back in 2014, 15, I was desperately looking for women who wrote books about money. It was Susie Orman, it was Jean Chaskey. That was pretty much it. And then like
Yep.
2017 around there, I found Erin Lowry. I
Mm-hmm.
like started to find more women, but finding women in the space was hard. And now I feel like there's so many of us. It just makes me feel so freaking good.
Yes, and I feel like there's like a low-key competition going for best cover, and I gotta say, you got one of the best ones out there.
Girl, it's funny. Like, I think when people take like the traditional publishing route, you have to kind of fight with your traditional
Yep.
publisher for your book cover. And I did a hybrid publisher. So I had a lot more control over my book.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I was very strategic about. Like, I wanted to make sure I have to maintain my full rights, copyright over my book. If I want to sell this thing to Netflix, I can do it. It's mine.
It's
It's not a
great.
publisher's. And the cover, I wanted to make sure I was like,
I love it.
cover has to be a heavy hitter. So I didn't want to have to fight over it. And that's why I kind of chose the hybrid publishing route, because I was like, I want to really make sure the book feels like me and not
Yes.
like somebody else. Yeah.
Exactly, because unfortunately, I've gone through the process of the book deal on the back end and have decided not to do it a couple of times now because of exactly what you're saying, where it's like they get to decide what you write about, they get to decide what kind of cover you get to do, they get to decide how you market it, or they put all the marketing on you, or where it's like they're
Right.
not going to do anything. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's been interesting going through it with two different, one major one and one smaller one. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Self-publishing's looking better and better all the
Right,
time.
girl. I think people were sleeping on self-publishing. I really
Yeah.
do. I mean, I think the one thing that you don't get when you self-publish or hybrid publish, like I did, is the global distribution, which I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to front is like a big thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but you can always hire somebody to do global distribution for you, especially if your book has success. Like, I got to tell you, I paid for my book deal. I didn't get paid in advance because I didn't do the traditional route.
Mm-hmm.
But in the first month of book sales, I made back what I put in, what I invested
Heck
to get this
yes.
book done. So I was like, you know what? This is working out. To me, it's not necessarily just financial either, but
Yeah.
I really, being a creator, like I really was most worried about ownership. I want to own everything that I spent all of these months and months working on this thing. I got to own it. And so
Yep.
ownership was big for me. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, when you look at the deals, it's either they give some, they take all of it, they give you nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up at these extremes versus having something that's like reasonable and fair. Like for me,
Yeah.
I had to pay a little extra because I wanted to narrate the voice of my own book. Why do I have to fight with you about that? Like, it's my voice. It's
And
my
it's
book.
your audience. They want
Yes.
to hear from you. The people who are buying the book love you already.
The stories in there, they're so personal. Like, to me,
Yeah.
like I wrote a lot of stuff about my childhood, of my upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
and like stuff that happened to me. How weird would it be for some old British man to be reading that? Like, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even
That would be, and it would feel like almost like this disruption experience for the reader. I feel like because I feel that way sometimes when reading. It depends on the book, but if it was like somebody reading a memoir and it wasn't the person, that doesn't feel right.
weird.
It feels weird as a reader as well.
Yeah.
So that's so cool.
I purposefully go and buy audiobooks that are narrated by the author,
Right.
because I just feel like it's different. Like I did that with Michelle Obama's book.
Mm-hmm.
I did that with, you know what? There's one book that I recently, a couple years ago, read and I loved that wasn't like that. It was Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She had Rita Moreno read her book. So
okay.
but it made sense.
Like when it makes sense, it works, but it's not like,
that
if
was
you
like
don't have control over the voice actor, it would just, I wouldn't be comfortable with that either.
She handpicked Rita Moreno, which makes sense, but like it was very similar voice. But for me, I was like, no, I rock with it when it's the person, like Alicia Keys. Like I like listening to the voice of the person whose story I'm listening. Like that to me is so powerful. And I just wanted to make sure I did that with mine.
Because you're going to hear it the way they meant it also, which is huge. So I love that. That's so cool. Way to take it under your own, like your own direction and choosing your own path. I think that's amazing. So very inspiring. Well, I really am excited to talk about your story and kind of hear what we do on the Money Bear whenever I have guests on, unless we're talking about like a very specific topic. I like to hear people's stories on what was money like for you growing up and how did you get to where you are right now, essentially in a very bare way. So let's start from the beginning. What was money like for you growing up?
Cool. Oh man, girl, it was no money. There was no money. I talk about this in the book, how I would go to my dad, like when I was in elementary school, and I'd be like, Dad, like, Papi, can I get $5 so I could buy like French fries and dollar pizza after school? And if I was lucky, he would give me a few dollars. Like, but most of the time he would be like, I don't have money. No hay dinero. Like, it was always stress, anxiety. Don't know if we're going to have enough to make the rent. Don't know if we're going to have enough to pay the bills. Don't know if we're going to have enough to buy all the food that we need for Thanksgiving or for dinner or for whatever. And I grew up in a household with a lot of mouths to feed. So my parents have 9 children.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so I have four brothers and four sisters, and I'm the fifth sister. And it's like a lot. Like it's a lot,
That's so
and
many. I'm one of five, and I thought that was a lot.
I mean, it is a lot. For me, it's
But
just extra
nine?
a lot.
That's
It's just
double.
extra a lot. Yeah. And it's wild. Like I think about how my parents, they moved to New York City in like the late 70s, early 80s. They didn't know anybody. They didn't really know English. They don't, have education. And my mom, I think, went to like the third grade, and my dad had to go, I think, couldn't go beyond the second, maybe third grade too. So they don't even have like middle school, high school education,
Wow.
let alone college, right? So we're talking about very little to no education, little to no English, little to no social capital, no network, nothing. And skills in terms of like, they could do manual labor, but like that was pretty much it. So the job market here was not very friendly to my dad. He could pretty much only work, the types of jobs that were easily accessible to immigrants, cleaning, kitchen work, that type of stuff. Whereas my mom, she had all these kids pretty quickly right after coming. She had like a pretty big family and couldn't really work because the amount of money that you need to make to be able to pay for multiple kids, to get childcare for multiple kids, it doesn't make sense financially. It makes more sense for you to stay home and take care of them, to save money
Right.
as a unit, right, with your partner. So my mom ended up just staying home with us. She would take us to and from school and to practice and to all the things in church. And my dad was the one who was working like 6 days a week. He had one day off, and that was the day, we got to see him. And he always had the TV remote. We could never take the TV when he had it because it was his only day to just relax and watch TV. So, it was interesting. I had this relationship with my dad where I knew he was like the person you go to when you need money, but he didn't really have much time or like space to create like a bond with us. But now
Right.
as adults, it's different. Like now I have a really close bond with my dad, and my mom is like a little religious. So I feel like she and I had a bond with her when I was little. Now I'm like, she says
Mm.
things that I'm like, no, mom, I don't agree with that.
It's
That's not my
funny how
worldview.
that changes over time.
Yes,
Yeah.
it really has flipped. It's so for me, Ali, it's really flipped. But the money situation is interesting because I think back to those early days, it was a lot of like me watching the dynamic between my mom and dad. My mom would always have to go and ask my dad for permission or for money, right? Like, oh, back to school is coming up. Like, can you give me $200 to buy the school supplies? And he would be like, you need to tell me exactly what you need and how much it's going to cost, and I'll see if I can, figure it out. And so she would have to like do the math, run up like the pencils and this many binders, this many notebooks. This is it's going to be like $180. He would give her $180, not a penny more.
Mm.
And groceries, we were on food stamps pretty much growing up. But if we ran out of food stamps and there was another week left before the next food stamps hit, she would have to go to my dad and say, listen, we're running out. We need some more things in the fridge. And he would be like, tell me exactly what is missing and how much. And it was just like this constant, like penny pinching with him. And my mom, I think she hates asking for money because
Right.
she spent so many years. You feel like your dignity is taken from you every time you have to ask again. And I think early on, I got a little bit of that from her because I used to be very embarrassed to talk about money. I used to be embarrassed to ask about money. Like, I'll tell you this one last thing, otherwise I go on. But when I was in high school, I remember I went to apply for college, and college applications were like $75, $85 per application,
Which is so much.
which is wild. And that's when I was applying. Imagine now,
I'm
right?
sure it's probably double.
Nuts. So I remember being like, okay, I have like 10 colleges I wanted to apply to. 85 times 10. Where the hell am I going to come with $850? Like, in what world? Like, I was so poor. So I remember just being like, okay, I'm going to have to narrow it down to like one or two and just beg my mom and dad for, to come with the money. And one of the counselors in my school was like, hey, like, did you get all your applications sorted? And I said, well, I just have to pick which two of the schools I'm going to apply to, because I had a list of like 10. And she's like, what do you mean? Just go to the college office and ask for waivers. They have application waivers. They'll waive the fee. And based on your family's low income status, you probably get like all 10 of them for free. It took me weeks to finally just go and say, hey, I need waivers, because I just felt so ashamed. I just felt like, and I think I inherited that from my mom, hating the feeling of having to ask so much. I ask for help. And, I carried that for so long. Thank goodness I've gone through therapy. I'm over that. I don't deal with that anymore. I'm very comfortable talking about money. But I think those early experiences like kind of, sustained me in that way. It made me feel that shame and embarrassment attached to asking for money.
For sure. I mean, I can only imagine having to see that not only in the stress of like of where every penny counts, but then also witnessing kind of like you said, this lack of autonomy, this lack of power your mom must have felt in having to constantly go to somebody who's supposed to be your partner. But really, it's more like they're your dad. They're your like supervisor almost, because there's no partnership happening there. That'd be really tough. And from that, do you feel like Did that impact once you got to college, once you started working at any point, did that impact your view of money and like how you managed
Mm.
money yourself?
I wish I could say it did. I don't think I was that thoughtful. I don't think I was that deep. I think I was just, I wasn't giving it much thought yet. And I felt like finally I have my own little money. You know, I had
Mhm.
multiple jobs and a credit card or two or three. And I was just like, you know what? Finally, I don't have to worry about asking anybody else.
Yeah.
And constantly when I would ask and I would be told, no, there's no money for that. So finally I was telling myself, yes, there is money for that. And if I couldn't afford it in cash, I would just put it on my credit card.
Mhm.
You know, I have, if you go back to like decades ago at this point on Facebook, you could see like pictures of me in Cancun, like for
Mhm.
spring break, kissing dolphins, like what the hell was I doing? I didn't have no money to do that, but I was putting all those trips on credit cards, the excursions, the flights, the hotel, everything. And just saying to myself, like, yes, I'm not going to keep saying no. I'm not going to keep experiencing the experience of being deprived, constantly being told, no, no,
Yep.
we don't have it. I was telling myself yes. And I think that's
Exactly.
how I got into cycles of debt and credit card debt and struggle with like not being able to manage everything. And, you know, part of that, I think, was just seeing my dad constantly saying no, experiencing the we don't have enough, we never have enough, there's never enough, and not being willing to admit that I needed help. So all of that
Yeah.
combined led to me going crazy with my credit cards.
Yeah. And I feel like for us, often when it comes to our parents' money behaviors and what we then do, it's either we do the exact same thing or we go in the exact opposite.
Total opposite.
The complete
Yes.
opposite. It's so rare. It's like when we heal our relationship with money and we educate ourselves on how money works, then we're able to find the gray. We're able to
Yeah.
find like something in the middle between those two extremes, but it takes some healing to happen, like in order to land on that.
That's a good
So,
point.
when did you get your first job? Were you working in high school or did you wait till
Yeah.
college or after college?
I did work in high school. I got my first paid internship when I was a freshman, literally like
Wow.
a couple weeks into freshman year of high school. I walked up to the art department. I was in an art high school, so performing arts high school. So visual arts, dance, vocal music, instrumental music, drama, and what else? What did the basement do? Technical theater.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to pick one of those majors, and half of the day you were taking classes in your concentration, in your major, and the
Okay.
other half was like academic classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so mine was fine arts. I was painting, drawing, illustration, sculpture, all that kind of stuff. And I just remember like I would see the list of the supplies that we needed for the first semester of classes. And I'm like, I'm sorry, these colored pencils that we needed to buy, they were not Crayola color pencils.
Were those?
Prismacolor.
Yeah, I was gonna
Prisma,
say, what was those
girl,
expensive ones? And they're so nice, but they're hella
that
expensive.
was $40 for 12 color pencils.
Yep.
Whereas Crayola is $6 for a pack. So I was just like, this is wild. I don't understand where they think I'm supposed to get all this money for these art supplies. And so I remember early on, I was like, all right, I need to work because I don't want to stress out my parents and I don't want them to make me change schools or anything like that. Because I really liked my school. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to work. So I went to the art department and I started to talk to people saying like, oh, I'm looking for, is there any like way to work either here or somewhere to get money? And the art department director at the time, she pointed me to the bulletin board where they had job postings. And I took
Nice.
a little application for an architecture firm in Manhattan that was looking for student interns. And I started like maybe 3 weeks after I submitted the application. And yeah, they paid me my little minimum wage. I think it was like $6 an hour at that time. And I would work every day after school. I would just take the subway down. I would get off Chinatown, walk, grab some dumplings, a little bubble tea, and then just walk to the firm and stay there making calls, checking emails, doing some some art projects that they were working on, which was really fun. And I got to
That's
learn a
so
lot
cool.
about community building, but it wasn't that much money. But
Yeah.
I started working, at 14. I was a
That's
little
amazing.
hustler.
And that's like a big girl job at 14. I mean, that's not like
Yeah.
working at concession stands or something. So I
Yeah.
love that. What an incredible experience to start from such an early age. And
Yeah.
so it sounds like the money went a little bit to dumplings, art
Oh
supplies,
yeah. Oh
boba
yeah.
tea.
Dollar pizza, McFlurries, Oreo McFlurry. I used to get that thing like every day. If it wasn't McDonald's, I was at Grace Papaya or the Dollar Pizza spot or the Chinese food spot getting, French fries with hot sauce and ketchup, bacon, egg, and cheese in the morning. I mean, everything New York, everything New York. It
Yeah.
was like, that's where all my money was going, all this greasy ass food. But it's funny because you think about when you're a teenager, like you're not really focusing or concentrating on what's coming ahead.
Right.
Going to college, wanting to have a few $1,000s saved. You don't think that when you're 15. You want like a sweet 16 party. You want
Yep.
like a new pair of sneakers. You want all the food, hanging out after school. Your social status matters so much to you when you're a teenager, so much more than it should. And it's our biology or it's our brain chemistry. It's not like we're choosing this, but
Right.
ultimately, I really do think back on those years and wish that I could have had different, priorities.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I started working when I was like 9 years old, and I wish I had known what a Roth IRA for kids was, like
Right?
even just to put part of it in there
Yeah.
so that I could
Yeah.
start investing early. But it was just
Girl.
similar to you. It was just like I wanted my own money. I wanted to be able to spend it in the ways that I could. And it was like, to me, it meant independence. It meant being able to like still
Mm.
get something if my parents said no. So I definitely relate to that. So after high school, it sounds like you had several jobs throughout high school,
Yeah.
assuming you went beyond the internship. And then
Mhm.
you got to college. And did you live on campus?
Yes, I
Okay.
lived
So,
on
so
campus.
we're thrown into adulthood. What was that like for you?
Woo. For me, the biggest thing is that it was such a culture shock
Yeah.
because I grew up in the hood in New York City, no money. Everybody around me in the neighborhood I grew up in, and I talk a lot about this in the book, that it was like a very specific experience growing up in the 90s and early 2000s in New York City, in Brooklyn specifically, in a neighborhood that was like all Caribbean American. So, like
Mm-hmm.
Haitians, Bajan, Jamaican, Trinidadians, Barbadians, like all these, or Bajans, they all like were in the same community together. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we all felt like everybody's in this struggle together. We're all dealing with the same kind of things. And so we all helped each other and like guide each other through. But it also meant that I was very limited to knowing people of these cultural backgrounds.
Right.
The first time I met somebody who was not like a person of color, the first time I met a white person was when I went to high school. I was like 14
What?
years old. Growing up in New York City, not running into a white person, so I got to high school because my elementary school, my middle school, well, my teachers in elementary school, I had white teachers and middle school, but like
Mm-hmm.
somebody my own age who was white,
Right.
no, not until high school. And it's funny, I've told one other person this story, but I remember meeting him, the first white boy that I met that was around my age, and he had a very Jewish name. And I
Uh-huh.
remember I asked him, I said, "Where are you from? Are you Puerto Rican or Dominican?" He said, "No, I'm Jewish." And I was like, "But like Puerto Rican Jewish?" Because
So cute.
I didn't understand what it meant to not be like either Puerto Rican,
Something.
Dominican, or a
Yeah.
black person or a person from some Caribbean country that I knew. So I had a lot of like growing and like lack of exposure, right? Going to college for me was a huge culture shift. Going from that to people from all around the world,
Right.
and being plucked onto this gorgeous campus, finally had my own room, my own bed, my own space, being able to go and come as I please. I didn't have to ask my mom and dad for permission. It's a lot, like very quick. You become independent, or you feel like you're independent. And, I don't think that I knew how I was going to respond to that in terms of my mental health. I felt
Yeah.
very lonely. Like within the first few weeks of school, I was like crying my eyes out, calling my mom, like, "Mommy, I want to come back home." And, because I didn't feel like I belonged there. People would have
Right.
conversations around me and they would be saying things and I'd be like, "What the hell? What does that even mean?" Like they would make jokes or references or use expressions and idioms that I never heard,
Yeah.
So I would be like, it sounds like they're speaking a foreign language, even though I know they're talking English.
Right.
So like my lack of vocabulary exposure, like a lot of things, even though I was an A+ student in my high school, being plucked onto a college campus with a lot, like a very competitive environment, you like all quickly, I was at the bottom of the pack.
Right.
So it was a struggle the first few weeks. And I had to really work to find like my tribe, people that like understood
Mm-hmm.
me and like got me, and also just get to a point where I'm comfortable like being different. And that's not a bad thing. Like if you're
Right.
different, use that as a badge of honor and celebrate that. So I think for me, the biggest thing was the culture shock and how quickly I had to become familiar with a wider range of vocabulary. Like I had
Mm-hmm.
to be a better writer. I would go to the writing center with all my papers because I thought I was a good writer, but I was getting C's and B's on my papers. And really putting in extra work to play
Mm-hmm.
catch up, which, it's a strike to your ego because I came in there thinking I'm the top of, my
Yep.
class. So that was rough on my mental health and my ego. But I do think that it was for the better because it humbled me and made me realize like, girl, you ain't all that in a bag of chips. Calm down.
Yeah, we
First
have
of
to
all.
have that moment of realization. I think
Yeah.
that if any of it, it's so interesting to hear from the perspective of somebody who grew up in New York, where it's like you were in the big city and I had a similar but obviously different experience of growing up in a teeny tiny town. And it was like teeny tiny town. We only had white people. We were in this little bubble. Everybody went to church and like football on the weekends. Like that was it. And I did well. I was like making good grades. I was a good writer, winning all the competitions and things like that. And then I got thrown into college as well and was just like, wait, so I'm not hot shit? Like, and it's
Right.
this whole
Need to
identity
work.
crisis where you're
Yeah.
just like, everything I thought I was,
Yeah.
I'm not, or I'm not to the level that I thought I was. And now I have to like work hard. and I have to
Yeah.
like figure this
That
part
work hard
out.
part. Yes, that work
Right.
hard part. Because you feel like you were working hard. And that's a weird
Yeah.
thing mentally. You like, you really got it, like, you have to get regrounded. Like, wait, what the hell? I thought I was working hard. But I mean, for me, it was a good shift. It was a good
Yeah.
shift because I wasn't working to my full potential. You know, my school environment previous to going to college was generally, I mean, it was hard, but I wasn't pushing myself as hard as I could. And I was still coasting. Like I was still able to get A's, even if I just studied like the day before the test. Versus in college, like I had to start studying like a week or two before the test to really get the grades that I was getting before. So it was me working harder and proving to myself that I could do that was actually really good for my ego at the end of the day. So I do think that having that shift is good. But ultimately, I mean, it's very hard for us to not compare ourselves to people around. I mean, you know, financially, this is
Oh yeah.
literally with money. This is why we end up in the situations that we end up in when it comes to money and struggling, because we're constantly looking around at what everybody else is doing with their money and trying to do that with our money, rather than just silencing all the noise, ignoring everything around us, and just deciding what it is that we want and using our money to achieve that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. They go hand in hand.
100%. And so for you, you had mentioned that in high school and you had kind of alluded to early adulthood being like, okay, then I went in the totally opposite direction of,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to say no to myself. I want to be able to fund the lifestyle that I want without having to worry about it. Take us on that journey of what was it like as a young adult, starting to manage money, starting in college, then moving into like, okay,
Yeah.
eventually I got to tell myself no.
Right. I mean, I think I really seriously started telling myself no after I graduated college. And I just started looking at the bills. The credit card bills would
Mm,
come in. And honestly, the way it was set up for me is I had all my minimum. I would just pay the minimums on all my credit cards. So by the time I graduated college, I had 4 different credit cards. 3 of them were maxed out. Almost all of them were maxed out. And my monthly payments were like $130, you know, $80 to 150 on each card. And I was looking at those bills being like, oh, okay, so if I have to send 130, that's all I'm going to send. I'm going to send 130.
right.
And I would not care about anything on the bill, on the statement, except for the due date and the amount that I owed. Now, the minimum amount that I owed. Now, I finally got to a point where I graduated. I started teaching. I, you know, became a full-time teacher. And I was just sitting down one day because my mom, she and my dad, they got in the habit of asking me to help with the bills around the house, which is
Mm,
fine, totally fair. You know, they weren't charging me a bunch of rent and I could take on a bill. I'm sure that was fine. But once I started doing that, I started to realize like, okay, wait a second. By the time I pay for my train pass, buy some food, lunch every day, you know, pay for all the things that I'm paying for, give mom and dad money, it's like I don't have anything left for myself. So it
right.
was that my budget was that tight to the point
Mm-hmm.
where giving an extra $100 to my mom and dad was throwing me off, throwing the math off. Like, wait, I don't
Mm-hmm.
get any money for me. So that's when I finally started looking at the credit card statements. And I was already teaching. So I was probably like 23, 24 years old. And I started scrolling through the statements and I saw interest fees, interest charges, interest charges.
Mm,
And we're talking hundreds of dollars. So I was like, wait, hold up. What is that? And
yeah.
across all the cards, I was like, holy crap. Like if I keep doing this, I'm literally every month just giving them hundreds. I might as well just take those hundreds of dollars every month and just flush it down the
Burn
toilet.
them. Yeah.
So
Well, and at
that
that
scared
point,
me.
you hadn't had any education about what credit cards were, or so
Nothing.
how did you get those credit cards? Was it a
Nothing.
college campus
Girl,
one?
yes, this was so
Ah,
in my book, I talk about the legislation that led to the
yep.
way that it is today. The Credit Card Act of 2009 was passed, which makes it illegal for college campuses to allow banks to come on or credit card companies to come on to campus and solicit students by giving them free gifts in exchange for a college application.
Yep.
Now, I got my first credit card in 2008. So it was
Ah,
before the
right
Credit Card Act of 2009.
before.
Yeah, right. Because I started college in the fall of 2007. 2008 was like spring of my freshman year. And yeah, that was when I was walking across campus and this lady had a clipboard say, hey, do you think would you like to apply for a student credit card? You can use it to pay for all your textbooks and things that you need. And then you make small payments so you can pay it back little by little. And I was like, oh, I
And
need
that's
that.
how
I
they're
need that.
teaching people about credit. That's all that it
That
is.
was
You're
all I
not going to
learned.
have to worry about, you know, the
Boom.
fact that it's a deep and quick trap
No.
into really hard to get out of debt.
She did
Oh,
not mention the word interest to me, not once. She
damn.
mentioned that you buy things that cost a lot. If you don't have the money, you put it on the card and then you could pay it little by little. So it helps you manage your payments. Now, in my mind, I was like, this is exactly
Great.
what I need because these
Win, win, win.
textbooks ain't cheap. The laptop I needed wasn't cheap. These art supplies, because I was taking art classes at Brown and Rizzi, I was like, I need these classes are not cheap. So by the time you add all that, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars So for me, it seemed like it made sense, but I
Right.
had no idea that my interest rate was like 21, 22%.
Ugh.
Like I had no clue.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's wild. But eventually I started actually looking at my statements. I started Googling like, interest charges on credit card. How does it work? I learned about, annual percentage rates, how it works on your credit card. And then I read Susie Orman's Women and Money. That was the first book that I ever read about personal finances, money,
Mhm.
anything around money management. And she has a 9-month plan for getting your debt under control. So I did that plan. I did it basically 2 times through, and I paid off the $20,000 of credit card debt that I had.
Yeah. Those are some
And
expensive pencils.
I paid that off in 18 months. But it's funny. It started as the pencils and the laptop and the textbooks,
Yeah.
and then it became the Cancun trips and the
Exactly.
and everything, right? So to me, I see it as like, it's a dual problem. It's a problem of the fact that I was not exposed. I wasn't given the education to properly make choices, to be informed. I wasn't taught consumer education, financial education, personal finance, money skills, none of that. But at the same time, I had this little pit in my stomach. Every time I would swipe the card, I would think like, what? How am I going to pay this back? Like, I'm taking it too far. I'm buying a flight to Cancun over here and I don't have the money. And I just told myself like, oh, when I graduate and I get this big girl job and I get this full-time salary, then I'll deal with it. Pushing the problem off to future me, which I talk about in my book, is like this, it's a bias that we have in our brains where we think that in the future, we're going to be perfect. In the future, we're going to be able to solve all the problems in the future, So I kind of like, I've learned so much, and I feel like a lot of the mental tricks that we play on ourselves have a big part to play. So I made sure to include, like, the second chapter of my book is all about how your mind plays tricks on you when it comes to making money choices. So I think that's super important.
I mean, it's in every aspect of our life, right? Like I'll have more willpower to eat in a way that like I feel good tomorrow, or, I'll start again next week. I'll start on the new year. I'll do XYZ. And it applies to every aspect of our life. And we have to like stop that magical thinking in its tracks and be like, no, it has to happen right now, or else it's not going to happen.
You're not going to magically start doing it tomorrow if you're not doing it today. To me, it's like, it's such a testament to how deeply our brains can go down this rabbit hole and play tricks on us, that you believe that somehow magically one day you're going to wake up and have $1 million, even though you're not starting now. Even though you're not starting to contribute anything now, one day it's just going to be there. It's just wild to me. One day I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to have 6-pack abs. Like they're just going to be there one day, even though I'm not doing any crunches now. It's just that one day they're going to show up on myself. I'm just going to wake up and be like, bam, look at that. I got a 6-pack. It's wild how our brains let us believe this stuff, even though it doesn't make any damn sense.
It doesn't, but we all do it. And it's like this embarrassing low key thought that we're all like, I had that thought too, where it's just like when I was doing nothing to build wealth, I always thought someday I'm going to be wealthy. I just know it. Someday I'm going to be wealthy. Do I have a plan? Do I know how I'm going to get out of it? No, I don't. And I remember talking to my friends at the time too. And I was like, do you guys have this belief? And they're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're all going to make it. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. Also, I feel like we haven't even mentioned the name of your book. So those who are listening right now, what's the name of your
book? It's called Mind Your Money, Insightful Stories and Strategies to Help You Reach Your #money goals.
And if you're watching, you can see the beautiful cover behind her.
Yeah, shout out to Tiffany, the budgetista. I met with her and she was like, girl, every time you're doing, podcast interviews or if you're talking to media people, you got to have a big old poster in bright color. And I was like, yes, girl. I ran to Kinko's and printed that thing. And it's been so cool. Like every time I jump on calls, even if it's networking calls and stuff, people always bring it up. They always reference it. So it's just been like a nice little hack.
It's so cool. I mean, back there. Heck yes. Like absolutely. Anything that you do as cool as writing a freaking book should be plastered everywhere.
Hello, everywhere. Yeah. So
I love it.
It's been a lot of fun talking about the book too, because I feel like I was nervous at first. I was like, there's so many personal finance books, right? Like at this point, because when I first started, it was just those classic old school books written by old white men, and they were all pretty dry and boring. And some of them were very helpful for me. I've learned a lot from some of those classic books, but I just wanted something a little spicier, something a little more fun, something a little more relatable. And even now, I feel like there are a lot more books like that. But I was like, I really don't feel like a lot of it is story based. And for me, stories are everything, because the data, the numbers, sure, that matters. And it affects our brain and the way we think about things. But how you change people's hearts is through stories. And so for me, I was like, I want it to be like a marriage between stories and strategies, like the stories and the personal finance. So personal stories and personal finance kind of like mixed together.
100%.
And that's what the approach that I took to Mind Your Money.
That's exactly how, if I wrote a book, I would want it to be too, because I feel like as teachers, most of our job is to inspire people to act.
Boom.
And you don't do that through the how. You do that through the why and the personal story and the personal connection and the impact and how it can change your life. And it's like, if we can't get people to act, we aren't doing a very good job of teaching.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know,
It's so funny. I hear this all the time about how, like, when you think about kids or students that you work with, if you're a teacher, you work with students, or if you're a mom or an adult that has kids in your life, they're going to forget what you told them and the
Yep.
words that you spoke to them, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel.
Yep.
And the way that you make people feel a certain way is by emotions. You have to pull the strings of their heart. And that's stories. Stories move people. And from way back when we were cave people, right? Like storytelling has always been in our DNA. It's how we protect ourselves. It's how we spread information. It's how we entertain ourselves, sit around a campfire, tell stories. I mean, storytelling is like ingrained in our human brains. We crave stories. We love stories. And it's weird to me how sometimes I go on to social media platforms with people talking about, you know, financial literacy, personal finance, and they just get straight to the, okay, step one, you know, pay yourself first, set up a budget. I'm like, what the? You're just jumping straight into talking about information without giving any context, any stories, any hook that really gets people to understand the emotional aspect to why this really matters and why they should care about it, and then jump into the, like, you know, the meat of it. So I wanted to make sure that I did that because, yeah, I feel like it was lacking in my intro to personal finance. I didn't really get that. I mean, Susie Orman did a good job talking about her stories and her experiences, but a lot of it felt still very much like cautionary tales, not so much like, let me explain what I went through and how I transformed my life, more so just like cautionary tales. And I wanted to do something a little different.
Well, and I mean, people see themselves in your story. And when they see themselves in your story, they can see, I can do this too. She did this. She's been where I am right now. And if she can do this, I could do this too. And that's what's so important about there. Like, even people who are thinking about creating content or thinking about teaching as well, or thinking about like doing whatever it is you want, it's like, you're not out there doing it. And there's value to you going out and doing it because everyone's story is different. And you never know who you're going to relate to. So that's right. It's the beauty of the internet. So you got to college, you got out, you were paying rent with your parents, you were also contributing to the bills, and you realized, okay, this is not sustainable. Let me see what Susie Orman's got to say about that. You got debt free. Was that the real oh shit moment? Was the looking at, like, even with living at home right now, I cannot make this work?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a combination of the fact that $100 that I would have to give to my family would throw me off so much, meant that something wasn't right. And so that kind of like drew me in to take a closer look at my finances. And especially because, I mean, my parents have always worked. I mean, even when my mom did have a job and my dad has always worked, they've worked the types of jobs where they're making maybe $35,000 a year. Yeah. And, you know, in New York City, like, that is straight up
with poverty. 9 kids.
With 9 kids.
Right.
So they've always been relying on government assistance. Everything was super tight, always struggling. And so for me to graduate college and be making $40,000 right out of college, like, really with
probably felt rich.
I felt so rich. My paychecks were like $1,200, $1,300 every 2 weeks. That was more money than my parents saw. So I was like, dang, like, I'm out here making way more money than mommy and papi have ever made. And I'm only 22, right? So it messed with my brain a little bit in terms of, like, I had this false sense of abundance of, like, I got money to blow. It's fine. I got money. And the fact that every 2 weeks another paycheck hits, like, that's another thing. You're like, oh, the money's just going to keep coming. And so that messed with me. I think it's a psychological thing that happens where you just feel like, oh, I don't have to really keep track or anything like that because it comes and goes and it's fine. It evens out. And when I started teaching, the aha moment was in my master's program, how they taught me that you can't change something if you're not measuring it. And when students come into the classroom, and in my school specifically, I was teaching in a Title I funded school, which is students were like the 75-80%, almost all the kids in the school, their parents are low income. So they're all like free reduced lunch kids, basically a school like the ones I went to. And, you know, we're talking about majority Black and brown kids. And so I was like, when these kids come in, they're already super far behind. Like, they're reading like 1-2 years behind grade level. I have to catch them up. In order to make that kind of change, we have to be aggressive. Like, we can't waste no time. Like, they got to be learning every minute. Like, we have to be really serious about reaching these goals and catching them up so they can go to the next grade on or above grade level. Right. And so the master's program, the classes that I was taking there to get my teaching master's, was like, you have to measure and track every week of progress that they make towards the next reading level. And you have to do that by teaching them vocabulary from the next level up from the one they're on, and then testing them on their knowledge of it, so comprehension, but also teaching them fluency and phonics so that when they're reading, they read more fluently and they're able to understand what they're reading, so they don't sound like little robots when they read. And then every week you give them another reading test and you measure their fluency, you measure their comprehension, you measure, you know, their phonemic awareness, their phonics, and all of that. You jot it down. So I had this tracker, and every kid's name was on my tracker with every week's date on the top. And every week I would go in there and mark their fluency, their comprehension, all the things that we were assessing. And I would mark what level they were at. So then in like 3 weeks, and they knew, the kids knew, they would be like, I'm level K, I'm trying to get to level M by December. Like, and they all knew their goals, where they are now, where they're trying to be, and what they needed to do to get there. I need to read 10 pages a day every day, and I'll get to level M by December. And how beautiful was that? My little 8 and 9-year-olds were like that. I wasn't like that with my own damn goals. So I was like, wait, I cannot be out here preaching to these kids that if you want to reach a goal, you got to track it, measure it, track progress towards it, and see if you're getting there. I got to practice what I preach. So I literally took the same tracker concept and I started tracking, you know, where I was financially. How much was I paying that? How much, you know, my net worth, kind of started tracking that. And that is how it bled over to actually measuring my progress, measuring my goals, and also just like forgiving yourself. Because one of the things all the teachers in my school building told me was the kids are sometimes going to misbehave. They're children. Like they're going to be naughty one day. And the next day when you come into work, you have to completely erase everything they said and did the day before. Give them a fresh, clean slate to just learn today. Let them be themselves. It's not fair. Imagine you walk into a space and they're like, oh, this is the Chloe who did this and that, made these mistakes, you know, last week. Right. And now they're judging you for your mistakes from the past. Like it's not fair. I wouldn't want to be judged. So I had to learn. That was the hardest part of teaching, was I had to completely wipe when they came in the next morning. Even if I was like, oh, you drove me crazy yesterday, I would have to give them a big hug. Good morning. How are you feeling this morning? Are you ready to learn today? I'm so excited to see you. Like, even if I didn't feel that way,
that is like an angel move.
Yeah, I need an Oscar award for my teaching years, because I was such but you know what it is? I realized that's what kids need. They need routine. They need structure. They need opportunity to feel like it's okay to make mistakes and to keep trying. And they need love. They need endless love. They just need every adult around them to constantly shower them with love and to let them know, no matter how many times you mess up, I'm still going to keep loving you. I'm still going to keep believing in you, cheering you on. And that's kind of, you know, it bled over to my financial situation too. And that's why I kind of decided I'm gonna go on social media and start talking about what I'm doing, because you find a bunch of like-minded people in your comments like, yeah, girl, do it. You know, I love learning from you. I'm doing this too. And that helped me find others like me and create this little community.
Yeah. And I mean, as a previous watcher of your videos on YouTube, that's what I felt from you. It was this love. It was this, like, you cared. You could tell you cared. And like, you've mastered the art of that. And clearly the teaching impacted that as well, because I can only imagine the amount of patience you would need.
Oh, yes. Patience of a saint. Now that explains why I don't have no kids of my own, you know.
Right. That's exactly right. It's not a coincidence that you do not. Exactly. Okay. So once you kind of got out and you were able to make that happen for yourself, what then inspired you to start creating content for people?
So I remember I was sitting in an apartment. Oh my gosh, where was I? I think I was taking a trip to San Francisco because my boyfriend at the time, he was living in Menlo Park. He was trying to like learn a tech scene and be in like the tech space out there. And so he was staying with a friend who was working at Google and was like learning coding and like being immersed in the tech space. I went out there to visit him, and one of our mutual friends works at YouTube. And we were just like having drinks, talking one night, hanging out in the apartment. And she was like, you know, Yanely, I could just watch you talk and I could have you on mute and I would still just watch you. You're like the way you move your hands when you talk and your eyebrows.
You're captivating.
Like she's like, I could just mute you and just watch you. It's like, you're so animated and it just makes me want to look at you when you talk. And she's like, you should consider like a YouTube channel. And I was like, what? And she's like, no, seriously, just whatever it is that you're passionate about talking about or teaching or explaining, like, think about it, because the fact that you're so captivating, people would want to watch your content. Like, I think they would. And so I was like, I don't know. Like, I kind of laughed it off. We all laughed. And I went all the way back to New York, back to my job, teaching and everything. And then the next year I changed jobs. Now, this is where the shift happened for me. I hated my job. Like
Mm.
when I left teaching, I loved teaching, but I was burnt out. I was giving everything and more to these kids, and I had never had energy left for myself or my boyfriend, for my family, for anything. And so I changed jobs to something that was a little bit less intense. It was still in education, but it was a private company and had after school care. So I would come in and do math and reading tutoring with, like, you know, all the students in the center after school hours. So I had my mornings, which you don't have as a teacher. And I really liked that because I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
So it was a different schedule, which I appreciated. But once I got into the like nitty gritty of the day in and day out of the job, I got bored and I was like, oof, I don't like this curriculum. I don't like the way they're approached to learning. I don't enjoy coming to work every day. I'm bored of it already. I want to leave, but it doesn't look very professional for you to leave 3-4 months into a job. So I decided I got to stay like a year or a year and a half, and then I could, you know, move on. So for that year that I was at the company that I really didn't enjoy, I needed something that I did enjoy outside of work. Like I needed to go home excited to do something else. So that's when I decided I'm just going to start posting YouTube videos. Everybody tells me I'm good at it. Let me find out what it is that I'm passionate about. And I was July, August, September, October, 3 months away from being completely debt free.
Wow.
So that was when I created my first video in July of 2015. And I paid off my last credit card in October of 2015.
Damn, can you believe you've been at this for 8 years?
Girl,
holy shit.
I truly don't. Like every time I meet people, they're like, oh my God, I saw your videos like almost 10 years ago when I first started. I'm like, don't remind
You're
me.
like, don't say that to me. Don't say that. That's just crazy because it's like we think of this like I feel like I'm of the second or third wave of finance creators where like we got our start on Instagram and TikTok, whereas you are more in the OG creators. But even before you, there were the bloggers, you know. So it's like there's all these different waves of creators, and it's so wild because I'm like, I've been at this for 2.5 years, and it
feels like forever.
It feels like forever.
Yeah. And that's why I've had to pick and choose, like, you know, first of all, I put it in my book. Like, I never really thought I would write a book. I don't enjoy writing. I always saw writing as like a chore. Like it was, I had to write like 20-30 page papers for my art history classes, my AP classes. I didn't enjoy writing. It was more like a homework assignment, and I just had to do it, and I would do it to get it over with.
Right.
And I don't like doing things that I don't enjoy. I want to do stuff that I like. But once enough people started saying like all of the stuff that you share on your channel, and even when you do workshops and in-person events, like there's a book in you, you know, like you have such a gift and stories and all these lessons. And so it kind of made me think like, you know what, maybe there is a book that I have in me. And for me, like the shift happened when I realized like, you know, I don't have to make this 100% of everything that I do. And I think that's the problem with like influencers get a bad rap, because it's like all you do all day, every single day is like constantly make content and look for content and try and go viral every day, all day, because that's what, if you want to do nothing else but make a living from your content, then you have to do that. Otherwise, you won't make it to the top 2-3%. And really the only people that make enough to sustain themselves off of content only are the top, like very small percentage of creators. Everybody else is like doing multiple things. So I thought to myself, like, do I really want my life to be this constant hamster wheel of feeling like I have to create videos every day, I have to be recording all the time, I have to be,
and it's got to be timely too.
Oh my gosh, always on current events, talking about things, hashtag trending this, you have to constantly be obsessed with this. And I realized I wanted to get into this to help people. Obviously, MissBeHelpful is like my whole channel name, right? I was like, I want to help people. I'm not trying to be obsessed with the algorithms and cracking things and posting content every freaking day. So I made a decision early on to go back to education and find a job that I would be really passionate about, that I would love to do, that also still gave me the freedom and the time to continue MissBeHelpful as a business and as a content platform on the side. But then I wouldn't feel so much pressure to do nothing but content all the time. Yeah. And so now I find myself in this like really nice space where I, you know, work with NGPF, which used to be like my 9 to 5 from 2018 to like 2020, 2021. And then I dropped down to like 3 days a week with them and really focusing on teacher training and advocating for states to require financial literacy by giving research and, you know, talking to education leaders and lawmakers and really educating them so they can understand why this should be a required class.
Hold up. For those who do not know what NGPF is, can you tell us what NGPF stands for?
Yeah. So it stands for Next Generation Personal Finance, or Next Gen Personal Finance. And it's a nonprofit organization that has curriculum. So anybody, anywhere with an internet connection could go to ngpf.org and pull up lesson plans, activities, homework assignments, games, videos for middle school and high school students. And it's all about money, personal finance. And actually they found my YouTube videos, and that's how they reached out to me. And we're like, hey, you used to be a teacher. You also have content in personal finance. why don't you come on the podcast? Like kind of like this, we had a conversation, and then that led to them creating a role for me to do educational outreach. And then, you know, obviously I was there full time for a while until then I went down to a few days a week because I realized like I still really want to do this work, but I have all these other passion projects. I've always been that type of person who likes to juggle a bunch of things because I get bored easily and I don't want to do the same job every day, the same way every day. Like that would just, me personally, that would drive me crazy. And I have a lot of energy to do different things and, you know, solve different problems and meet different people. So yeah, so now it's like 3 days a week I'm working on NGPF and teacher training, supporting teachers, curriculum, advocating. And then the other days I'm just doing MissBeHelpful work, which is really focusing on my business. So either meeting with clients or doing speaking engagements, obviously book sales and book promotion is a huge piece of it. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm, you know, creating content on social media. So
I love it. This is like the perfect definition of designing your dream life. Like exactly. So often we think we have to pick one or the other, where it's like, I have to go all in on my business, or I have to, you know, really dedicate myself to climbing the corporate ladder. And you're like, nah, I'm going to do whatever I want.
I love that point because I feel like the more I age, like now I'm in my mid 30s, like I'm 33 now. I feel like once I'm like 34, 35, I don't think I'm going to have any friends who are not in this thirsty ass pursuit of one thing career-wise, like either climbing up the corporate ladder or like being successful as an entrepreneur, or, you know, just this one thing that they're obsessed and this is the one thing. And I think it's because we want to reach the finish line quickly so we can be like, oh, finally,
so we can relax.
Now I can focus on my family, my friends, my hobbies. And for me, I've kind of been like, I think I just want to have it all. Like, I think I want to be able to do something I'm passionate about for my career and have time for my family and friends and have time for my partner and have time for me. And like, if I just make this my life now, then future me will also be living this life. So I just, you know, I kind of designed my life with that in mind.
It goes back to that concept of like slow financial independence and creating a life you don't want to retire from, creating a life you don't need a break from. And to me, that's the culmination of everything we're working towards, right? We want that life where we're not trying to escape from it. And I love it. I think that's really inspiring, especially it's so easy for people who see folks like us on the internet and think we have it all figured out and think we know what we're doing, and that we don't question these things and think, oh, I wish I could just pick my one thing and like really be passionate about something. And it's so refreshing to hear. One, it's okay if you don't have one thing. A lot of people don't. Most people probably don't. And two, you can do a little bit of it all. You can try things. You can do it for a little bit and change your mind, or you can do what you've got going on, which is a little bit of everything. So I love that.
Me too. I think it's just not being afraid to be non-traditional. Like everything doesn't have to be just this one way that we've been told traditionally, this is how it has to happen.
Exactly.
For some people that's going to work, but there's all these other alternative routes that we can take and ways we can live our lives. I don't think we should be so afraid to explore those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love hearing from people who are significantly older than me. This is not you. I'm not saying you are not.
Like, dang, girl,
we're the same age. We are the same age. But this is what it made me think of is I always love hearing from like guys and ladies in their like 50s and 60s and 70s when they talk about all the different lives they've lived. And it's like, I'm always so inspired by that. And I love hearing that they had career shifts at 50 or career total changes in their 60s, because it's a reminder that life is long. It's the longest thing we will ever do. And you get to change your mind. So amazing. Well, I'm so glad we got you on the podcast today. It was so nice having this conversation with you. I've got a couple more final questions for you. I always like to give our listeners 3 things. What are the 3 tips that you have for them that, you know, can be life related, finance related? What's your 3 tips on how to live that dream life?
Okay. So the first tip, which is, I wish I had figured this out sooner, is like kind of ancient wisdom, right? Like know thyself. I did not know who I was, what I cared about, what I valued. I was just blowing with the wind. If the wind goes this way, that's the way I'm going. If the crowd is going that way, I'm going that way. And I never sat to truly and really ask myself what I like. What do I care about? Not because I want to try to impress someone else or because I want somebody else's attention. Like me, myself, what do I like and what do I not like? And be real, be so brutally honest with yourself about what it is that you care about, what you don't care about. And there's no judgment here. It's just straight up facts on paper. Like that's all it is, because then you can pull away from it and realize this is who you are. This is what you care about. And now check and see if your money matches that. Because if it doesn't, then you're out of alignment and you got to kind of align that better. So for me, I think it's just introspection, Writing a lot helped me with that. Therapy helped me with that.
Yep. Shout out to therapy.
Girl, like, and if I had gotten to all of that a little earlier, I think I would have gotten a head start financially too. I started a little early, like in my mid-20s, I was already investing and doing things financially, but I feel like I still didn't quite have a handle on who I am and what I want from this life. It's hard when you're young. You haven't lived that much to really be able to know. But your tip I like about listening to older folks who have some, you know, wisdom to share because they've been through some things, more things than you. So, you know, listening to that. So first thing I would say is know thyself and really take the time to do that. The second thing is I would say I have really shut out a lot of the crap on social media. I have unfollowed so many influencers, brands, celebrities, like all the crap. And I've really been selectively curating my feed and what I look at, because I do feel like we have to protect our brains, our mind space. And that means like when you look at something, are you choosing to look at that, or is it being forced in front of you? Whenever I'm on social media, every few times I scroll is going to be an ad. So no matter what, there's going to be some things on there that I'm forced to see that I didn't choose. With everything else, I'm going to make sure I choose it, because I don't want double or triple the amount of crap on there that I didn't choose to see. And I feel like it was draining me, like so much comparison, constantly
100%.
looking at people, stupid shit, posts about fights, posts about this crap. I'm like, why do I want to see? Why do I care about that? Like, I had to really get serious about what it is that I care about. What type of content do I want to consume? And, you know, really do a cleanup, like clean up the data, clean up your social feeds, clean up your phone, who you texting, who you calling, like clean it up and be selective, you know, because that to me is like your time is the most precious thing you have. And you waste time when you're giving it to people that are not, you know, chosen by you for a reason to be part of your life.
I had to start thinking about my attention as currency, because essentially it is. And it's like, it's our most valuable currency. And so really shifting your feed truly can shift your life.
Oh, for sure. So, okay. So know thyself, you know, do a data cleanup with your feed. And then the third thing is like, make time for money conversations. I had to start actually getting serious with my boyfriend and I. We've been dating for 10, 11 years now. And we have these money conversations every single month where we talk about, did we, you know, do what we said we wanted to do this month? Are we getting closer to doing things that we want to do? What do we need to change? Where's our money going? And we don't combine finances. We have separate accounts. We have one joint checking account, which is where we each contribute our portion of the rent and the bills. And that just automatically pays rent and bills every month. Everything else is separate. So it's more of like a check-in to kind of hold each other accountable. You know, I'll show him, you know, my retirement account. He'll show me his, I'll show him my investment account, just to, hey, are we where we want to be? What else can we be doing? And having that conversation has really changed the way I see our relationship. I can tell he's really serious I'm serious about our relationship. And it allows us to then be able to talk about anything. Because if you can talk about the hardest things to talk about, you can talk about anything. And so it really opens up the communication that you have. This doesn't have to be a partner. For me, it's my partner, but it could be a parent, it could be a best friend, it can be your roommate. It's whoever it is that you're constantly sharing time with. Go there and make time to talk about money, because I feel like society constantly tells us that we shouldn't be talking about it. And don't ask how much you make or what your credit score is or how much you've invested, or, you know, it's like, oh, it's seen as rude. So the only way to break that and to fix that is for us all as a society to decide we don't actually, you know, subscribe to that way of thinking. We decide it's not rude. It's necessary,
it is
important, and we're all going to do it. So
you never know who's being left behind if we don't have those conversations. And it's like, that may be the only conversation somebody has about money, and that transparency and the ability to talk to people about it. It's huge in every way. So I love those tips. Those are beautiful tips. Are you guys still sleeping in a hammock, by the way?
We have our hammock, but in this Miami apartment. So we moved to Miami in 2021, July of 2021. The old apartment that we had was really nice because you had two walls with like sheetrock. So you could actually put the hooks into the walls to hold the hammock. But here in Miami, I'm not complaining about our beautiful apartment, but one of the walls is glass. The other wall is like has a giant gap because it leads into the bathroom, and the other two walls are like the distance between them doesn't make sense to hang the hammock there. So what we did was we bought a hammock stand. And we have a giant hammock, like a double XL Brazilian 100% cotton massive hammock. We love taking naps in the hammock, but anything more than like 2 or 3 hours of napping in the hammock, it's too taut because the distance between the hammock stand is not enough. It's not the full like 14 feet that you really need for it to feel like you are not tight. So we haven't been sleeping in it as much. We do take naps in it, but we're hoping that we can get a bigger apartment soon enough so we
For
can
that
bring it back to
hammock.
its full
Yes.
hammock glory.
Oh my God, I love that. I remember when I first met you in person and you were talking about, I was like, wait, you guys sleep in a hammock
Yes.
together every
People
night?
think
I was
it's
like,
so
that's
weird.
amazing.
It's so funny because we had a regular mattress. Like we had separate apartments. So we both had our own mattresses. We're not hammock people. And then my boyfriend, when we moved in together, we got what did we get? A Casper mattress, one of these mattresses they ship to your house.
Sure.
And he was just having a lot of back problems. He would wake up and be like, oh, my back hurts, no matter what we did, no matter how he slept or whatever. So he went down this Reddit rabbit hole and just found out that there's 2 ways that you can at home, like relieve your back. The first way is to sleep just flat, like on the floor, which they have these Japanese mats called tatami mattresses, which is literally like a 1-inch thick slab that you put on the floor and you sleep on top of it so that it really straightens your back and aligns your spine. So he got a tatami mat, put it on the ground. He would sleep there. And then the second way was to get a hammock and to sleep in it a certain way at a certain angle so that your back is straight and it actually helps relieve your back. So he went back and forth between the hammock and the tatami mat. And then I would be over his apartment all the time. I would just take naps. It started with naps. We would just take naps in the hammock. And then eventually we would just like fall asleep reading a book together or something. And we'd wake up the next morning like, my grandma.
And your back's feeling all great. Yeah.
That was the best sleep. And he didn't have back pain as much. And so we'd be like, oh, maybe we should just get rid of the mattress and put the hammock there. And we'd open up way more space in our apartment. And when we move, we wouldn't have to move a giant bed frame and mattress. So we sold the mattress, sold the bed frame, and kept the hammock. And we did that for years, honestly, until we moved to Miami.
That. I love it because it's such a playful curiosity and openness to just be like, let's try it. Like, why not? So, all right, key to a 8-year relationship or 10-year relationship, guys, sleeping in a hammock together and the playful curiosity that comes with it.
Cuddle a lot. A lot
there
of cuddle.
You go. I love it. And no kids. I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh. All right. Before I get canceled, go ahead. Tell everybody where can they find you? And then I have 2 fun questions for you.
All right. You can find me anywhere on social at MissBeHelpful, MissBe Helpful. Helpful only has 1 L, people. I know there's been some fake accounts that be like putting helpful with 2 L's at the end. That's fake. That's not me. It's 1 L. Helpful has 1 L at the end. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of the platforms. And then for the book, you can go to mindyourmoneybook.com.
Awesome. I love it. And we'll put links to all that in the show notes. Okay. To end the convo, 2 quick questions for you. Number 1, what's your very first money memory?
Oh my goodness. My first money memory. Okay. I think it was kindergarten and I wanted to go to a class trip and my dad was like, no, because it was too much money. I think it was like $35 per kid to go see the Empire State Building. And I was like, the whole class is going. And my dad was like, no. And then my mom, I think she just must have borrowed the money from my godmother or something because she gave me the cash and I was able to go all the way to the top of Empire State Building when I was in like 5th grade. And it's wild because that was back in like 1995 or something like that, which the World Trade Center was still with the Twin Towers. And we stood on the Empire State Building and looked at the Twin Towers from the 84th Observatory, which is crazy. I get chills up my spine because I remember looking at the Twin Towers from that. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old at that time. But yeah, just feeling like, oh, I'm not going to be able to go do this fun thing with all my friends because my dad said we don't have the money.
Yeah. And then your mom came to the rescue.
Yes, mom always comes through. Always.
Yeah. Aw. And was that the only time that you saw the Twin Towers?
Yes. That's the only
very
time I was that
impactful.
Close. Oh yeah. The only time I went back to that area was when I graduated college, just way after.
Yeah. All right. And then a fun question. Is there anything you're obsessed with right now? Whether like binge watching a show or, I've had people mention that they're playing chess on their phone like crazy.
That's a big thing right now. Oh my gosh. So that one is my boyfriend's. Jamil, he's been playing chess a lot. Yeah. But okay, so for months and months and months, people kept telling me about this book. Everybody's talking about it. Oh my gosh, it's a New York Times bestseller. Everybody got it. And I just, for some reason, was just too busy doing a million other things and didn't have a chance to get it. And recently I was on a flight and at the airport, I saw the book and I picked it up.
What is the book?
It's The 7 Wives of Evelyn Hugo.
Oh, yes. Yes. Husbands, not wives.
Sorry, did I say wives? The 7 husbands.
Wives.
Girl, it's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I read that book in 2 days. Literally yesterday, I finished it because I swallowed the book up. It was so good. It just like hooks you right away. And then when I got to like the middle of the book, there was a line there where the narrator or the speaker in the book was like, then I found out the thing that made me want to kill her. And I was like, oh, now I have to finish.
Yep.
I just became obsessed. I was obsessed with it for like 2 days. So I finally finished it and now I'm done.
Oh, you want another one?
Yes, I'm literally looking constantly.
Okay,
But when I'm going to bed, I need to read.
this is totally different. And I will
Okay.
say, I never thought I would be interested in any type of fantasy ever. So that's, I also read The Seven Husbands. Whoops.
We're making them wives now.
Yeah, I know. The Fourth Wing.
Okay,
If you
writing
like
it down.
a lot of sex, a
Ooh,
lot of like,
love
a
it.
lot of female like protagonist, heroine, overcoming
Yes.
odds, dragons, like a total plot twist, some political shit. It's so good. I read it in like 3 days.
Oh my gosh. Politics, dragons. We got Game of Thrones going on.
But so I didn't even watch Game of Thrones. Like, I'm so not a fantasy person, but now I am.
Okay.
But
No,
now I am.
Now you have to go back and watch Game of Thrones.
Now I'm like, I guess I have to watch Game of Thrones because it's like, it's so good. It's so spicy. And it's like candy for the brain too, because it's not super dense. You don't have to like think too much about it. It's just really enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I wrote it down. I'm gonna get it. And
let me know if you do.
And you got to do Game of Thrones, and then we go.
Okay. We'll reconvene. We'll talk about it. I got like mine's gonna take like 8 years to finish.
For real. Oh, for real. No, but you get hooked, and then you end up at 2:00 in the morning trying to finish the episodes because they're so good.
All right, I'll try it. All right. Well, it was such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much again. Everybody go buy Mind Your Money. I've got my copy, so you guys all got to check it out. I'm super happy for you and excited to continue to see how this does and what you do next.
Thanks, Boo. Can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Money Bear podcast. If you've made it this far, do us a favor, take 2 seconds, rate, review, and subscribe. It seriously means the world to me. And if you just take a sec to do that, I will appreciate you endlessly. And if you do, let me know on Instagram and I'll thank you personally. So got that. And of course, since we were talking about anything financial on this show, please note that nothing on this show is intended as financial advice. I don't know you, unfortunately, and because of that, I cannot tell you what to do with your money. You got to work with a financial professional who knows your situation, who is preferably a fiduciary, and keep in mind that everything that we talk about on this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It's all my opinion. So there's that. If you want to see our full terms and conditions, head on over to the show notes. And while you're there, we've got free resources for you to get started on your money journey down in the show notes as well, including a free guide to help you with your budgeting templates and budgeting tutorials and investing 101, understanding the different accounts that are out there. All that good stuff is inside of my free guide, which is also available at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/guide. And if you're ready to take our relationship to the next level, I am also hosting a monthly investing class. And that investing class, you can find the times we're offering it this month at thelazyinvestorscourse.com/webinar. That link is in the show notes as well. And that's where you have the chance to meet me live and ask those money questions live. It's a good time. We've had over 20,000 people as of recording this join or register. And yeah, it's always nice to meet you guys. So I hope to see you there. Again, all that is available down in the show notes. So thank you again for coming and listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.